Cigarettes. Um, I think cigarettes are pretty cool, and I'm gonna tell you why. Uh, obviously, I don't want to make this video like some fucking PSA about like the dangers of smoking and how it causes cancer, and because I feel like everyone essentially knows that, which is why I feel that it's kind of redundant to put it on packaging and stuff. I think it's fine the way they do it in the U.S., where it's like on the side and it's like a little Surgeon General's warning. That's fine. I think doing some level of warning citizens of its of negative health effects that are associated with tobacco and cigarettes in particular is not inherently bad in any way. But I do think that there's sort of an uh, overbearing sort of effectively you could call it the nanny state. Although that term gets used in many dubious ways, but I think in this um, in this particular example, I think that's actually sort of apt, in terms of you know um, the government is trying to uh, police what you put in your body and say you can't have that because it's bad for you, but it's like, where do we actually draw the line? There's so many things that we're able to purchase in society that are extremely unhealthy, but you know McDonald's is an extremely profitable company, and sort of exists without any serious government interference. um, so where do we draw the line, right? But I think that I think it's interesting to sort of look at the history of cigarettes and the prevalence of tobacco use. Um, you know, Obviously in the early 20th century, cigarettes were you know extremely commonplace, and in fact were, I think you were sort of singled out if you weren't a smoker. It was more odd to not smoke than to smoke. You could smoke in public places. Um, you know, Men smoked, women smoked, and in fact, there was a certainly an effort by big tobacco companies to sort of market towards women. After originally you had unfiltered cigarettes, and I think at that time, like smoking, especially before cigarettes, when you just had cigars. Smoking was a very masculine sort of activity. Um, Smoking a pipe, smoking cigars. Rarely are women depicted doing so in media of that era. But with the advent of cigarettes, and especially with filtered cigarettes, um, it started becoming more sort of acceptable, for women to smoke as well. Um, and then you had tobacco companies doing things like making slim cigarettes, which are basically thinner in diameter, usually menthol flavored as well, that were marketed specifically towards women. Stuff like Capris and um, Virginia Slims, and a lot of brands that still exist, and they'd use stereotypically feminine colors on their packs. So I think that's part of it's interesting, but I think that ultimately cigarettes are sort of the prime example of like propaganda working. And I don't use propaganda in like a derogatory way. I just use it in a descriptive way of it is propaganda to say, to spread propaganda is just spreading a sort of message or narrative through you know media, whether it be posters or film or what have you. And the concerted effort in the you know I would argue, I guess, the 80s and 90s was sort of the the birth of the sort of anti-smoking campaigns. I think it's very interesting to see how quickly cigarettes were turned from something that was so commonplace and so acceptable to something that I think I would especially say like the 2010s to be something like disgusting and like foul. I mean, I think a lot of millennials were they sort of grew up in that time are like still very like cautious of like like oh, I was a smoke free home. Was this product this thing I'm selling was from a smoke free home? And I think another part of that too is like asthma started becoming a thing, and so like if you go I think there's like an emphasis on like I have asthma, so don't smoke around me, and you weren't seen as like a nerd for having asthma or like it's just like a thing that's like like peanut allergies, that kind of thing. Like people just have to sort of accept it and work around these sort of medical exemptions that people have. But something that I find really interesting is like Gen Z and its relationship with cigarettes. People talk ad nauseum about vaping and like this is the the cigarettes 2.0, and they're marketing towards kids with the fruity flavors, and how easy it is to vape, and like we don't know the science behind it. Like who knows what people are going to be like the vape like 50 years from now. Like how what long-term negative health effects we could see, and so on. And but I think what's more interesting is Gen Z's relationship with traditional forms of nicotine consumption, mainly cigarettes. And that is something that I think is a much more interesting discussion than just like the fruity flavors. They're trying to get they're trying to get kids hooked, which I think is true. I mean, I think you'd be a fool not to sort of see that. Yeah, of course they're marketing towards children. Even still, I mean, if kids are getting their hands on nicotine products, that's an issue that can be solved with laws that are already on the books. I don't think we need to punish adults for the crimes of kids. But I think that the relationship between Gen Z and cigarettes is a lot more interesting than its relationship with vaping, because vaping is I mean, vaping and Gen Z are inherently linked because they sort of came about at relatively the same time. But the relationship with cigarettes is more interesting because it is almost an in the time of vaping, in the era of vaping, it's almost an archaic object. I mean, when you look at sort of the ease of using a vape, it's so much more discreet. It tastes better to a lot of people. I almost compare it to like smoking a cigarette is like drinking a beer, and vaping is like having a White Claw. It's a lot easier. It's a lot sort of, it doesn't require as much effort. I mean, with a cigarette you're lighting something on fire and then inhaling sort of hot smoke into your lungs, and and so, but why do people still smoke cigarettes? People my age. myself being one of them, and I know many other people that smoke cigarettes. I mean, obviously, there's always social smokers, and that's always a thing. But like, I think um, eh, I think cigarettes in 2023 are being sort of rebranded. Um, you see with the advent of a brand like Hestia. One of the it's so hard to get a new cigarette brand. All right, jump cut. You'll notice I changed my attire because I'm recording this on a different day. My storage ran out before I could finish my complete rambles on my first recording. Continuing on my what I was talking about with Gen Z's relationship with cigarettes. Recently there was a brand new cigarette brand that was approved by the FDA in the United States. And if you know anything about cigarettes and the FDA, it's very difficult to get new brands approved. Most of the quote unquote new brands, that pop up on the cigarette market are usually cigarettes that have been previously sold under a different name and that have just been rebranded. Basically, if they have a very similar likeness to a previous cigarette sold, that's one of the easy ways to get a new product approved. But for a company like Hestia, who I believe originally started selling cigars, or maybe not like regular cigars, but I think like little cigars or cigarillos, and have now expanded into the cigarette market. They are marketing very much as a sort of hip new brand of cigarettes. Sort of and I think that it's very much caught on with a sort of counterculture that exists in the United States. I think it was a New York Times article about Hestia, and this. I believe I know that they're only sold in certain states. I think there might be like 5 states where you can buy Hestia in stores. They do ship all across the country, and I believe internationally. But I mean, good luck with duties and such. I haven't yet bit the bullet on trying to get a carton shipped to Canada, but I'm glad that they do have that option though. But there's this sort of thing like it's really hard to get Hestia, but people are trying to get them, and recently actually they're still trying to get it approved, but they have created the first. If it's approved, it will be the first commercially available cigarette with a biodegradable filter. So if the filter doesn't end up in like a receptacle or something, it will not take like 10 years to break down and deteriorate as contemporary filters do. Though I guess they're one of the most like littered objects in the world, which kind of makes sense. So this is beginning to sound like like I'm sponsored by Hestia. I wish that were true, although I don't think that's legal in any way. But no, I just find it interesting because despite this sort of effort, especially by the Canadian government. I mean, coming from somebody who lives in Canada, Canada was actually the first, I believe, the first country in the world to adopt the practice of, I think it was 75% of the package of the pack has to be warning labels. Um, that was in 2001. Since then, a lot of countries have followed suit. Obviously, I don't know, maybe not all with the 75% ratio, but one of the few that remained the least affected by these sort of smoking packaging laws is the United States. They also still are able to sell menthol cigarettes currently, although that's set to change. The Biden administration has indicated that very soon they're planning to institute a ban on menthols, which sucks, But I mean, menthols have been banned in Canada for as long as I can remember. You can't still get it on reserves and stuff, but there's no commercially available menthol cigarettes available to buy anymore. But yeah, I mean, I guess, my pitch, I began this video with, smoking or cigarettes are cool. I think that, I guess the way that I see it is like, I also enjoy alcohol, and alcohol is not good for you. It's also addictive, not as addictive. I don't know if it's physiologically addictive like nicotine is. I don't quote me on that. Obviously, it's incredibly habit forming. But I don't know about if it's like inherently addictive. Either way, alcoholics, there's a lot of them, And recently, there's been studies that show that alcohol causes cancer. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, everybody drinks alcohol. Is alcohol going to become like the same thing as cigarettes in 50 years? I don't think so. And the reason I say that is because the difference between alcohol and cigarettes is that, okay, in nicotine, like, you can get a head rush, whatever. But I mean, I feel like that's, most people, especially people who've been smoking for years, are not smoking cigarettes to get a head rush anymore. They're smoking it because they enjoy smoking, but they also like the feeling of, nicotine in their body. Not like just like not the head rush part, but just the, fulfillment part, if that makes any sense. But alcohol gets you drunk. And people don't want to miss that feeling. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people like to get drunk, including myself. But, I think people will be less, or sorry, I should say, people will be more hesitant to just get rid of alcohol because they're like, wait, I want to keep that feeling in my life, Cigarettes, it's a little bit easier because it's not like well, I mean, nicotine is a psychoactive drug, but it's not like, it doesn't create as intense an effect as alcohol does on your body and your mind. So, yeah, it's bad. They're bad for you, and they do cause cancer. But at the same time, you can never smoke cigarettes your entire life and still get cancer. So I mean, like, I don't encourage people to smoke, but I don't discourage people to smoke. I believe if you're an adult, if you're of age to purchase nicotine products, you should do whatever the hell you want to do. And I don't think the government should tell you shouldn't be able to smoke this kind of cigarette or that kind of cigarette. And, the same goes for vaping products, because that'll be next, I mean, there already have been plenty of regulations on vaping in this country and in the United States as well. And I guess, there is a certain, um, I didn't even get into like the aesthetics of cigarettes, but like, it's so much cooler than vaping from a purely sort of visual perspective. Um, and also, the social aspect of smoking. Like, it's just so, it's a very social activity, and it's also something that requires. I mean, certainly, actually, well, I think, actually, I will say this: the only good thing that has come out of the smoking, smoking being outlawed indoors. Although I mean, in reality, I do agree with those laws because secondhand smoke exists. Whatever. Selfishly, I wish you could smoke indoors, but I do understand why those exist. I'm not like, I am in favor of those. But another good thing that has happened because of those is like all the smokers go outside, and anyone you're smoking with, you immediately have something in common with them. And it's a very social activity, and it's something that like requires like a little bit of effort, um, where vaping does not. Vaping is so easy. Okay, you can't vape indoors in public places, but I vape indoors at my house, and um, but smoking, I have to go somewhere else to do it. And it's like that makes it an activity. It makes it more fun because there's like an effort. It's like a break, smoke break, right? Like it's something that you intentionally go and do. It's more of something that you actually have to, you know, intentionally go do. So, um, I guess that's pretty much all the thoughts that I have to share with you about smoking and cigarettes. Um, I feel like there has been a shift, in terms of there's been a break. I think people are finally getting sick of this like constant barrage of like, you know, smoking is bad, smoking causes cancer. Um, it actually is astonishing. Like if you try and do any research about cigarettes and smoking, there's literally everything. Even like supposedly like, unbiased articles of information, um, are just like everything is just like has a caveat, you know. And it's like obviously those things are true. I'm not, denying any of these like negative health effects. Obviously all of these things are very much true. But like it's not listed as just like it's basically, if you read, even on Wikipedia, there is almost nothing about the history of smoking, and it's written in such like it's written in like the most like medical way possible, the most unappealing way as possible, and that's intentional. And so there has been this coordinated effort to like, even through mechanisms which we perceive to be unbiased, to push this narrative of you know this like supposedly plain, this place where we would usually come to receive plain-faced reading of information. Even that, is a place where there is a narrative, and there is a message of, you know we want to tell people this thing is bad. And I think that's wrong. I think people should be able to receive, information about all the different facets of smoking, not just ones that painted in such a grotesque, light. Um, and I guess that's just my plea, and I think that I don't think I'm alone in that. I think, I mean, look at the Instagram account Sigfluencers. I mean, there is this sort of rehabilitation of smoking as something that is cool and preppy and trendy, um, among people, and I think that that's okay. I don't think that's like, especially, I mean, people want to smoke. It's fun, and I don't know. I think that's okay. And I think people are just tired of being like lectured at, you know. Um, and perhaps it has to do more broadly with like a general mistrust of authority. Distrust is the word I was looking for. Which I also support, you know, in some facets. Not in like a conspiratorial way, but yeah. So I guess that's really about all that I have to say. But cigarettes. Do you love them? Do you hate them? Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Um, are you a smoker? Do you vape? Do you not do any nicotine? Do nicotine. I do nicotine. um, yeah. Let me know. If you have a favorite cigarette brand, what are the cigarettes like wherever you're from? Because I'll tell you where I'm from. They're pretty fucking bad. They're really bad, unfortunately. But I do have ones that I like more than others. But yeah, um, they're trying to stamp us out, guys. We can't let them win. No, I'm joking. I'm half joking. Anyways, that's it. If you like this video, like the video. It's kind of a natural way to show support. And subscribe, and maybe I'll make more of these. Anyways, that's it. I'll see you in the next one.